We'll get going in just a minute or so. I wonder if you could just check your controls and make sure you're on mute for now. That way, we're not sort of competing with each other and making a cacophony of sound. So if you could do that, that'd be great. If you're not sure how to do that, just look for the little microphone symbol. I think it should be on the bottom of the screen. Just put your mouse on the screen and it should come up. That should come up. Also, there's a chat option there too. I wonder if you could just type in yes if you can hear me speaking now. And then once I make sure that I'm there, I get going. I've got Christine sitting here with me, and she's going to handle the chatting options for me. Good to see they're coming in now. So we'll get going in just a minute or so. So just familiar, I'm recording this, so we'll have a backup. And I know some people can't make this meeting, so we're going to make sure everyone gets a copy. Well, it looks like it's just about time to get started. So let's get into it. So welcome to the Be Safe. I'm Gary Simmons. I'm very excited to launch this training. I also feel honoured that you've given me a vote of confidence by taking the time out of your busy schedule to be a part of this program and to join our Be Safe in Your Space community. Before we dive into the training, I'd like to quickly explain how the program will unfold over the next 6 weeks. Firstly, each Wednesday we'll have a webinar at this time. Each webinar will go for about an hour, and then afterwards we'll have some Q&A. Hopefully, you can schedule the time to be here live each week. It's important for our community building, and being here live gives you the opportunity to discuss any questions that may arise from the training. Of course, life and circumstances sometimes get in the way of our best intentions, so in case you can't make the webinar, I'll be recording it in full so you can either watch the rerun or refer back to it later. Now, I have to be upfront here. There will be some homework included in the program, but don't worry, I'm not going to load you up with assignments. The Be Safe in Your Space homework will consist of you practicing skills, strategies, and tactics throughout the week, as well as learning how to be your children's confidant and coach. It just means you'll have to keep this program in mind as often as possible as you move through your daily life. And take a mental note or post something on our Facebook group that's relevant to the lesson. This program also creates a special community for you to interact, relate, bond, and develop trust with your child in a way that perhaps you haven't done before. One of the main objectives of this program is for you to learn how to effectively encourage your child to manage their everyday life with confidence so they may navigate their own path through their trials and tribulations. And this is a way to empower your child to take responsibility for their reactions, decisions, and relationships. And when they can't, there you'll be, the coach. The aim is that you'll be quietly watching and observing your child's process of communication and responding. The program is designed to help you to feel confident in discussing and then explaining to your child how they can practice new techniques and develop their skills, as well as find a place to get help if they need it. While those troublesome kids, the ones who are the source of continual conflict, who pull the wool over their parents' and teachers' eyes, unwittingly face something new, a solid and united team. As well as the weekly webinars, I've put together a series of short emails that I'll use to review lessons and to give you the pertinent links to all of the video, audio, and PDF resources that we'll use in the program. So please make sure you check your emails regularly. Don't worry, I promise I won't barge you with a barrage of lengthy emails, but I do require you to open what I send you and review the content. Also, there's an invite-only closed Facebook group for our community. Please join this group ASAP. If you're not a member of Facebook yet, all you need is an email address. If you're worried about privacy, go to Gmail or Yahoo and create a new email address and use this to join Facebook under a nom de plume or a nickname. Then you mark all your details as being private and you're good to go. It won't affect the content if you choose not to use your child's real name. Just refer to them as Timmy or Susie who go to Southside School. I'll send out the invite link for our Facebook group tomorrow. And lastly, I want to make sure that everybody in our group gets the most out of this training. I sent an email out a few days ago asking you to reply with a list of the 3 main outcomes that you'd like to get out of this training. I also included a 5-minute audio that explained exactly what the Be Safe in Your Space concept is and how it all began. Thanks to all of you who've responded. If you haven't sent back the email or heard the audio file yet, I'd appreciate it if you do it ASAP. And I should point out at this point that this is the first lesson of my pilot, so it's all new. And one thing I would like to say is that I wish I had a few more graphics in the presentation, but I'll be working on that as the weeks go. So, where do we begin? It's such a vast subject. What a scope. As I mentioned in the introduction audio, you'll find that a lot of the ideas and concepts within the program are basic common sense, while others are quite technical. Some points may even stretch your comfort zone. However, if you do find sections like this, please persevere, because a mere snippet of information may be the difference between you or your child averting or at least minimizing trouble, as opposed to panicking or freezing and being emotionally reactive without options. Outcome-wise, my commitment to you is that by the end of this 6-week program, you'll have some tools to help your preteen or young teen demystify as well as understand the tactics and objectives of a bully. You'll know how to effectively collaborate with your child, so if they're ever targeted by ongoing harassment or aggression, you can both work out a permanent solution together. I want to teach you how to teach your child how to deflect aggression non-violently, or in a worst case scenario, how to quickly use some simple and effective self-defense moves so they can protect themselves and escape. Remember, I'm delivering this training from the point of view of a parent who's coaching their child, so my approach will be as simple and straightforward as possible. Also, I'd like to stress that this first lesson is quite conceptual and theoretical. There's no way around it. We need to cover the basics quite thoroughly in order to build up so we can work on the more advanced techniques, tactics and strategies. So let's dive in. If I can hear some sound there, if you just check your microphone to see if it's on mute, and that way the audience won't sort of hear the rustling around. So just look for that little icon with the microphone and just click on that and go mute. Anyway, let's be clear. Anytime someone else's behavior, actions, or attitude makes you feel scared or uncomfortable, you're experiencing an attack, no matter how subtle or indirect the action may be. An attack is any deliberate adverse act that's intended to trouble or hurt a targeted person's body, mind, or spirit. For the purposes of this program, I've defined any doer of an unprovoked adverse act as a troublemaker rather than a bully. I think the word bully is used so much these days that it's losing context. I think the term troublemaker describes these people for what they really are. It's important to stress, though, that if you deliberately or inadvertently provoke someone into attacking you, it'll be very difficult, if not impossible, to be safe in your space, because in your tormentor's or assailant's eyes, you're the troublemaker. It's you who's given a justification and a strong motivation for them to counter the threat that you've posed. Inducing problems with others in this way is definitely not conducive to being genuinely happy and contented, which is the whole point, knowing how to use non-violent self-defense. When you're truly safe in your space, you'll experience a tangible feeling or sense of being free to express yourself and to just be you. Okay, now that we've established that, let's begin with the fundamentals. Oops. Finding your personal space. What exactly is your space and how does it relate to everybody else's space? This is how it works. Each individual has a sense of their own personal space, which is an area around your body that you feel comfortable with and where you'll notice if somebody else enters into it. Sometimes, as with family or friends, the closeness within this zone is appealing. However, with strangers or troublemakers, it feels very uncomfortable or even like a violation. If this kind of intrusion happens on a regular basis, it can be very stressful. There's no right or wrong or recommended personal space. Each of us determines our zone from many subliminal and psychological elements. Cultural factors also come into play. For example, if a person is used to living with an abundance of space, as in Australia or Canada, they'll generally need more personal space to feel comfortable than someone from a small country with a large population, such as Hong Kong or the Netherlands. Similarly, some people from rural areas feel claustrophobic while they're in the city. So, what's your zone? Let's try this experiment to distinguish the boundaries of your personal space. So you need to find a volunteer to help you, preferably someone who's not an intimate family member. A friend or a colleague is a good option. You get them to stand motionless and position yourself so you're standing face to face with them about 15 centimetres or 6 inches away. Ensure there's no physical contact whatsoever. You'll see that in the top left photo. At this distance, the person in the experiment will be well and truly inside your space. No doubt it feels uncomfortable because this feeling is like a physical force. Now, gradually edge back around another 15 centimetres. Stop and notice the difference. This person will still be uncomfortably inside your space. However, you'll feel the force has diminished somewhat. You'll see it in the top right photo. Move back another 15 centimetres and take stock again. Keep doing this and stop at the point where the other person's presence no longer affects you and draw an imaginary line at the halfway mark, like in the bottom right-hand corner. This line is what I call the neutral zone, or the point where your space ends and the other person's begins. Ideally, when meeting someone new, we connect with them on the neutral zone as an equal rather than being dominant or submissive. The game of a troublemaker is to put pressure on your neutral zone in a negative way by using well-practiced theatrical tricks that have been especially designed to psych victims to react in a submissive way by either moving backwards or using submissive body language, such as by dropping the eye line. I'll be sending out some resources about this in an email so you can really get a good grasp of this concept. And it's also a part of your homework. This exercise distinguishes your physical neutral zone. However, in relation to verbal and psychological attacks, it's also important to realize that this principle equally applies to your mind and spirit, although in a less tangible way. Let's examine the key element in knowing how to be safe in your space. If you think about it, self-defense is generally thought of as warding off an attack on your space when it's been violated by implementing some offensive fighting skills, which may include using a weapon. In some desperate situations, it may be necessary to use fighting skills. However, to really thrive in everyday life, we must be able to utilize our brain rather than our brawn. It's true, knowledge is power, and in essence, non-violent self-defense is the deployment of brain power. I define it like this. Being safe in your space is being confident and being able to utilize your intelligence to anticipate, avoid, or outwit a troublemaker. If you think about it, weapons and martial arts skills are merely tools that the brain instructs the body to use. The problem with this is that these physical tools require a high amount of maintenance, or the regular practice that's required to sharpen and continuously hone the skills that make a weapon or a martial art technique effective. Thankfully, the brain can also deploy a wide range of low maintenance tools such as diplomacy and tact bluff, guile, body language, or what I refer to as physical expression, and of course the voice. These are the key tools of knowing how to be safe in your space. Most importantly, when it comes to working with kids, the use of these tools must be taught in a way where the skills are combined with the commitment and determination to never be a troublemaker yourself. So it's important to understand this concept of being a troublemaker inside out. I'd now like to dig down a bit deeper on this topic. Humans have the remarkable capacity of thinking. In the natural world, it's our edge or key to survival. We can think ahead and plan as we create conceptual ideas. We can manifest thoughts into a physical reality. In that context, I'd like you to think about this. If we can't hear, see, smell, taste, or touch something, does it really exist? Are hunches, warning bells, and a sixth sense merely new age waffle or something real? Well, I for one believe that we're all being guided in body, mind and spirit by a mysterious and omnipotent higher self that opens the way towards our ultimate potential. And I'm not referring to anything within a religious context here. Let me elaborate. As a human, every imbalance within the body, mind or spirit either depletes our sense of joy or adds stress, which results in a lower quality of life. To resolve any kind of internal turmoil, we need to use all of our mental faculties or senses, including our intellect, feelings, logic, and subconsciously driven impulses. Our internal guidance mechanism, or intuition, is one of the most powerful tools for solving the tough problems or decisions in life. It's what we use when we can't seem to get a vexing question or problem out of our thoughts. Intuition is not dependent on direct stimuli from the 5 physical senses, and it's far removed from everyday consciousness. Intuition is the medium by which we access the lessons derived from our entire living experience. It's the means to access all of the accumulated knowledge from the deepest recesses of our minds. Most people are aware of their inner voice. When you read something interesting, you'll likely be reading aloud in your mind and hearing a calm voice that translates the symbols of print into the medium of language. From time to time, another more impetuous voice will butt in and disrupt this calm voice with various nagging, emotional, or aggressive comments and judgments. This emotional voice is the ego at work. The voice of the higher self comes from a far deeper level of consciousness than the ego. The higher self is responsible for coordinating the actions and choices we make for not only surviving, but thriving throughout our entire lifetime and reaching our ultimate potential as human beings. The ego is more concerned with the emotional things, such as our immediate wants or appearances. Here's an everyday example of when we use our higher self. Everyone knows the rules and procedures for crossing a road. The continual application of these rules keeps us safe every time we cross a street. As aware adults, when crossing a street, we subconsciously switch on a little antenna that instinctively scans the road for potential dangers before we commit to where the danger area is, where the traffic is. Once the higher self is satisfied that the situation is safe, we then calmly walk across the road while maintaining a heightened awareness of our surroundings. On reaching the other side, we immediately forget about this process until we're ready to cross the street and so on. This cautionary routine is not outwardly obvious. It's a subconscious and reflex action. If an unsupervised small child or an animal were to observe it, it would appear to them, with their limited awareness, that we cross the street without thinking. Road safety is drummed into children at kindergarten because being proficient at the school is literally a matter of life and death. For simplicity, I refer to this type of heightened awareness or skill in everyday life as bodyguard mode. Being in bodyguard mode means automatically using sensory inputs, experience, and instinctive feelings to appreciate all the nuances of our environment so we can anticipate and thwart danger or dislikes when going about our daily life. Bodyguard mode is the skill of reading a situation or a person's behaviour and being confident to plan and implement an appropriate response to a potential problem before it becomes an actual problem. This is achieved by making a conscious effort to keep your attention forward and not in the clouds. The idea is to be casually aware instead of blissfully unaware of your surroundings and interactions with other people. Brain power in non-violent self-defense is the application of common sense, making a strategic response to danger or a problem rather than a reactive or emotional one. In turn, the ability to drop into bodyguard mode is a way of being able to duck and weave around unnecessary, harsh or negative encounters and to be able to handle the unavoidable ones. It doesn't take much practice to make dropping into bodyguard mode an everyday routine. It's just like paying attention to road safety. This kind of awareness can become natural and will put your preteen in good stead for navigating the teen and adult years that will soon be upon them. To help them get it, it takes the right approach, depending, of course, on the child's age. When you communicate with your child, use tangible examples such as, if you're on the beach and you left a $10 note on your towel and when you went for a swim, what do you think might happen? When they tell you, ask them, why do you think this would happen? Then ask them, what could you do to stop this from happening? The idea of this exercise is to help your child practice how to think through a potential scenario. Of course, timing is critical as to when you do this, so don't be pushy. Try a discussion like this next time you're in the car together. Share stories and examples. Now, I must stress here that being alert doesn't mean wrapping yourself or loved ones in bubble wrap or being paranoid about an attack every time you step outside into the wider world. I'm also definitely not suggesting that the world is an unwieldy place, unless there's due course to think so. On the contrary, becoming well-versed in non-violent self-defense develops a sense of safety and courage to experience situations and parts of life that you may have previously been too afraid to explore. Discovering relevant knowledge removes the unknown from a situation, making it possible to gain control of what, when and how you choose to participate in life, as opposed to always relying on the philosophy of everything will be fine and then only hoping it'll be. Practically speaking, being in bodyguard mode for a child may involve simple things such as having some prepared responses to a troublemaker's antagonism. It could be working out who else the troublemaker antagonizes and begin to cultivate a friendship with them. It could mean to determine exactly when and where problems arise to see if there's a pattern, and if there is, strategize a way to break the pattern. When people become motivated about learning how to act and rely on their own instincts and judgments rather than wanting to be told what to do, they begin to develop a high self-esteem, confidence, and resilience, as well as to ease anxiety. I see this type of transformation in people on a regular basis at my martial arts school. The satisfaction I feel when I see people realize that they can be free of fear and liberated from self-imposed mediocrity is one of the most rewarding aspects of my work. Positive feelings such as confidence directly improve the quality of life in many ways, including being able to gain energy and emotional balance. Do you get the idea? I just want to drill down even deeper. Now that you understand the concept of the higher self, think of it as a metaphoric inner entity that's the bridge between our everyday consciousness and our essential nature, which can also be called our spirit. The higher self is also directly connected to our conscience. That's why when something doesn't sit well with you, it's hard to overlook it. The message is truly coming from the source, from our deepest being. So it's absolutely essential to keep the discussion going with your kids about being in touch with their conscience. If your child gets into trouble, or if you worry about them becoming a bully, having them attuned to this concept is the way they can listen to their higher self to either control themselves or to have the courage to fix their transgressions, which is what we want from young people. Our higher self receives, edits, analyzes, and allows us to utilize the vast amounts of data that we accumulate from all of our past experiences. It taps into the lessons learned from our culture, society, and role models. The higher self provides a survival guide for the physical world. It's our voice of common sense, of reason and wisdom. In times of stress and danger, it's possible to access the higher self at will by practicing certain methods of meditation. It's actually simpler than you might think. The main requirement is to become mentally and emotionally quiet and to breathe. This helps the intuition process during stressful situations by stabilizing the nervous system, which then paves the way for a response rather than a reaction. I have some effective techniques for this as we progress through the program. The higher self also controls the ability of keeping our mouth shut when it's prudent to do so. An egotistic response to a potential trouble could be blurting out rash, unproductive statements such as, "You're stupid," or "Why should I?" or "No one can tell me what to do," without any regard to the consequences. Even if your first reaction to trouble comes from the ego, which can happen to us all, the higher self can still override any inappropriate ego response. To do this, the higher self must be trained to a level where it can, if necessary, tell the loud, brash ego to keep quiet and get back into line, because the higher self is logical and rational. Later in the program, we'll also be exploring in detail the dynamics of the relationship between the ego and the higher self, and how, if you can teach your child about this, they'll gain a significant edge over individuals who live their entire life being controlled by their ego. If a child can understand what this means, even at a rudimentary level, it'll become easier to reinforce to them how it's far more empowering to take responsibility for issues than it is to blame others or circumstances. The term body, mind, and spirit is bandied around a lot. In my experience, not many people actually grasp the concept of spirit. So let's explore this further. On many occasions, I've seen practitioners of various martial arts, including Taekwondo, who at first glance seem to be very highly skilled and proficient, yet somehow are defeated by a smaller or less technically accomplished opponent. A winning advantage often comes from the victor's spirit. History is filled with examples of the strong human spirit triumphing over the impossible odds. Besides the obvious physical benefits gained from challenging activities such as martial arts training, there's another equally important internal or mental benefit: the creation of an indomitable spirit. Although seemingly intangible, a strong spirit is one of the most critical factors in being able to effectively broadcast confidence, determination, clarity, and the ability to function efficiently when subjected to extreme stress or fear. By nature, an unprovoked troublemaker is a person with a spirit that's lacking. So in some situations, this knowledge can be used to great advantage through using techniques such as the vocal shock or the voice of authority, which we'll be exploring in detail over the coming weeks. Spiritual training involves developing our mental faculties to a degree where we can become emotionally detached from any attempted aggression or harassment. Remember, I'm not talking about religious concepts here. I'm referring to how once the emotion has been controlled or diffused from a problem situation, it's far easier to work out a course of action or solution because the mind is clear and the higher self is not clouded by feelings of anxiety, doubt, fear, or rage. During an ongoing emotional or psychological attack, spiritual training can also reverse the negative effects and hold a troublemaker might have on a victim. I also believe spiritual training is the best way for people to prepare themselves once they've decided to take control of their destiny and become responsible for whatever their life holds. An example of this is a former student of mine, who I'll call Marilyn, whose story illustrates this point clearly. Marilyn was in her 40s and a student in my adult Taekwondo program. Her everyday comfort zone included being included being too afraid to stand up to the daily abuse and occasional violence from her bullying husband. Marion diligently trained 3 times a week and always applied 100% effort. This commitment achieved quick results. As Marilyn's fitness level increased, her physical and mental comfort zone also stretched and expanded. Gradually, she's able to make the choice to not be a victim. Marilyn learnt Taekwondo so she could access the confidence and tools needed to confront and deal with the main source of grief in her life, her own low self-esteem. Once she had control of her self-esteem, she was able to counter her husband and, in fact, deny him the fear and control he had over her. She eventually went on to save her family and marriage. Any physical activity, sport or labour that feels right for you can start the process of spiritual training. The reason being is that challenging physical activity keeps the noisy, egotistical part of the brain busy because it forces us to focus on breathing, just like in martial arts training or during a meditation class. The goal of spiritual training is to transform the body, mind, and spirit into an integrated unit. When our intuition is in harmony with our spirit, we can direct our focus on any goal or ambition in life, including dealing with adversity and creating appropriate strategies to deal with any energy-draining issues or problems that may arise. When the ego is not engaged and in control, our higher self is free to guide us in the right direction so we can discover where we want to go and be in our life. People with a lifestyle that involves a certain level of risk-taking, such as being intoxicated and around other intoxicated people in public places, means that being safe in your space may come down to sheer luck. There are serious consequences for being unprepared in social situations that include alcohol and other mind-altering substances, particularly in young people finding their way in the world. It's no different for younger children. For the most part, they know the difference between right or wrong. However, as their coach and confidant, it's important that you give them a really strong grasp on how the choices they make have positive or negative consequences and how certain friendships may not be in their best interests. Obviously, you can't control who your child's friends are, but you can point out to them about the consequences of having bad friends in a non-judgmental way and by using practical and colourful examples. One of the main problems I see with kids is they haven't been properly taught the concept of how consequences can have far-reaching effects on their relationships, freedom and fun. The fear of parents not wanting their child to suffer any unhappiness, inconvenience or discomfort is the reason for this. And although it may be difficult, it's vitally important for your child's development that you must be able to stand firm in a kind way when you need to, and conversely, reward them when it's appropriate so the child fully understands the nuances of consequences for their actions. If they can genuinely appreciate this concept, you'll be giving them the tools to figure out things for themselves, even if it does take a while. Remember, whenever you talk to your kids about uncomfortable situations, don't be direct. Set the conversation up with your own anecdotes and then leading with, I heard that some kids, ... After your child responds, you can casually follow up with, have you ever heard of kids who ... Then it's easier to lead them into an indirect discussion about, going the wrong way, the friends they make. For example, some kids make life difficult for the kids around them because they are mean, or you know what I mean. What they say. The kids at school who are always being mean to others probably don't have any friends or don't have much happiness. The impression they give people. Kids in a soccer team who don't try hard at training won't get much time in the game. Have you noticed that? And most importantly, how they respond to a given situation. Do you think that kids who don't listen to their mum when they're told to put their iPad away get to play on it longer? Or do you think that their mum will take it away? So now let's explore trouble. People with malicious and aggressive personalities can often be quite practiced at using verbal attacks. In most cases, their sharp tongues and verbal tricks have been honed to have maximum effect. Their skills are like a preferred weapon or as a tactic and means of intimidating and psyching out others to be the centre of attention. The bullies and troublemakers who tend to favour the theatrical trick of using their mouth as a weapon of domination, provocation and intimidation attack their victims because they know from experience that if they provoke enough in this way, they're almost guaranteed a submissive reaction. I've noticed that bullies often have excellent communication or verbal skills and are able to twist a situation and manipulate the truth so that any trouble seems like it's begun with you and it's therefore your fault. Does that sound familiar? Bullies often have a keen insight into a victim's sensitive or vulnerable emotional spots and an ability to choose words that can cut deeply. When under a verbal attack, one of the biggest temptations is to lash out, verbally or physically, in response. Often this is exactly what troublemakers have planned. They want a public outburst as a reaction to it, so observers will think that you're unstable and have provoked a confrontation, so it appears that you're the aggressor and not the victim. Always remember that unprovoked people who rant and rave do so because this tactic is their favourite mode or way of forcing a submissive reaction from their target. Excessive bluster results from an individual being frustrated and insecure about themselves and has nothing to do with their intended victim. However, any apprehension or fear shown by a victim provides the troublemaker with power, and bullies feed on fear. More often than not, emotional or psychological attacks are directed at us by someone we know or who are regularly in contact with, at home, school, or for adults, at work. An emotional or psychological attack can come in the form of words, looks, or actions, in a direct form or as veiled and implied threats. These types of emotional and psychological attacks are particularly insidious because more often than not, the target is the only party who recognises what's going on. People around them may not be aware of this subversive interplay between aggressor and victim. Emotional and psychological attacks can be subtle and niggling or full-blown assaults used in conjunction with verbal and physical attacks. However, most emotional psychological attacks are carried out surreptitiously and for prolonged periods, for months or sometimes years. Typically, though, an emotional or psychological attack could be a hurtful personal comment such as, "You're fat and ugly," "You're a retard," "You're a short ass," or "You're gay," to mention a few. Be aware that when a troublemaker is held accountable, they'll usually say, "Oh, it's just a bit of fun," or "only a joke." Sometimes kids just say inappropriate stuff. They always have and they always will. It's a part of growing up. It's important to gain the resilience to just go with it if it's an isolated incident. However, if it occurs regularly, you both need to work out a way to deal with it. Marilyn's story, whose domestic situation included some extreme examples of emotional and psychological attacks, is a real example of how becoming responsible for yourself and finding the will or motivation to do something about an ongoing emotional or psychological attack can not only be achieved, but can also create a positive outcome. An interesting point is that Marilyn was able to toughen up mentally as a direct result of physical exertion. If a negative situation is prolonged and continuous, a very useful non-violent strategy to begin releasing anxiety and regaining control is to document in a chronological order the events causing you concern. Take notes or keep a diary listing all the details that cause concern. Record such things as dates, times, the circumstances, places, and your feelings. It's particularly important to note if there were any witnesses, and if possible, record their names. If witnesses to an incident are not on side, don't say anything to them, just write down their details nevertheless. Record all the details, no matter how slight or trivial they may seem. Document every occasion the troublemaker says something antagonistic or launches an attack. Then, if a situation deteriorates enough to warrant making your complaint official, you'll have what's required to initiate legal action if and when you feel it becomes necessary. If you do decide to go to the authorities with this kind of information, the troublemaker concerned, and their parents for that matter, will inevitably try and wiggle out of it by justifying a point here or an incident there. However, if you've been compiling a comprehensive journal, you can be quietly confident that the perpetrator of your child's harassment will be blissfully unaware of what they had said or done and when. So when your complaint becomes official, you'll have them firmly against the wall on your terms and in your time. The tables will be turned and you'll be in control of the situation. I, for one, firmly believe that the pen is mightier than the sword. Also, for less extreme situations, written notes are vital for formulating a response because when reviewing these detailed records, it's possible to do so with mindfulness or focused clarity. Journaling in a chronological order of events is an excellent way of being able to constructively think through a problem so it can be permanently resolved. Also, if a problem is keeping you awake at night, get a pen and get a pen and paper and jot down a list of your concerns. This will help you to let go, knowing that your concerns are out of your head and on the page. So then your higher self can allow you to get some sleep. Journaling allows you to actually do something. Even if the information you gather from journaling is never used formally, it's still very useful data to gather because the feelings of victimized can be eliminated. This is one of the key strategies of knowing how to be safe in your space and where you can play a vital role as your child's coach. You can explain why it's so in a way that the child can understand, and then you talk. As the conversation progresses, you can ask for clarifications and you can take notes. By doing this, the child feels as though they're being heard, and this is comforting. As things progress, these talks will lead to you working out counter strategies together. As you can see, it's just one of the many ways to gain self-confidence in situations that sometimes seem insurmountable. Are you still with me? Can you just type yes in the chat box? Let's say Christine. Anyone saying yes? I'm seeing some coming up. Well, let's slightly change direction now and look at the different types of troublemakers that your child's likely to encounter at school. No matter what your child's attitude to school is, be it enthusiasm or reluctance, they're going to be spending a fair proportion of their life there. Being a part of the school, for that matter, any organisation, office or workplace, invariably means mixing with people who have different values and expectations about how to interact with others, as well as what is or is not appropriate. Although we're discussing kids and schooling here, the issues are universal and could just as easily refer to adults at work. So try and bear that in mind as we proceed. Every person is entitled to go about school or work feeling free from threats, abuse, intimidation, and victimisation at all times. Unfortunately, schools are rife with troublemakers who go out of their way to seek their gratification at the expense of others. No field of human endeavour is completely free of competition and tension. Sometimes, though, these pressures can create unpleasant side effects such as low self-esteem and absenteeism. Let's take some time to look at how ongoing trouble at school works involving peers. School is where a child starts to break free from the total control of their parental influence. It's a natural part of a child's development to individuate. School life is also a major contributor to their general happiness. As we've touched on earlier, being unhappy at school can affect your child profoundly and in turn affect family life. Trouble at school may also have far-reaching consequences that can traumatize a young person for the rest of their life. A reluctance to make waves at school by standing out, by being different, or by being subjected to the scorn of a troublemaker is a valid concern, and many students choose to suffer a lot of stress in silence rather than making a fuss and actually to do something about it. The tall poppy syndrome is alive and thriving in schoolyards. To stand out from the crowd and perhaps be labelled as being weird or gay, disgusting, or even stupid by the troublemaker for daring to be themselves, or to call the troublemaker out on bad behaviour, may cause a child to feel excluded or rejected. Although this is absolutely not fair, this is how a bully isolates and renders their victim powerless. If this were to happen, it may be prudent in the short term to keep quiet and bide your time to formulate a plan. However, the cost of suffering in silence for the mid to long term is paid for dearly by the heart and soul. For myself, I was able to distinguish this kind of situation when I first left school, when I was unwittingly thrust into an extreme situation that in many ways was comparable to a school from hell. Long ago, I started my work life in a now defunct shipyard where hundreds of young men aged between 16 and 21 trained as apprentices. This environment was a massive and fertile ground for bullies. The dockyard had a culture where bastardization and emotional torture was considered normal, and for some, as entertainment. The need and desire for me to be safe in my space and to survive during those formative years first motivated me to research bullies in earnest. In the dockyard, I noticed that bullies play a game where they antagonise a victim as much as possible to hopefully produce tears in the shortest possible time. Anyone with a short fuse or prone to loud and emotional public outbursts were ruthlessly hounded by the resident dominant troublemakers. 5 years as an apprentice and subsequent experiences in outback mining camps and industrial complexes gave me quite an insight into how it's possible to successfully interact non-violently with the rough, tough, and mean characters who are totally different to me. I've noticed that bullies hold their power by keeping their victims isolated and scared. Bullies feed on fear. And of course, there's the principle of divide and conquer. For some people, creating negative attention, even hatred by being a bully, is often preferable to receiving no attention at all. I've noticed how many people with bully tendencies are often intelligent with a lot of potential to be successful, which they're good at hiding. Yet they dramatically lack the necessary self-esteem or confidence to channel their energy into a positive endeavour. I've noticed they often suffer from intense fear of failing syndrome. A lot of intelligent bullies know they have potential, so the inability to override their insecurity or fear causes them to feel a deep frustration. When an underutilised intelligent mind becomes frustrated and bored, it often becomes destructive. You probably know troublemakers like this yourself. I'm talking about those cynical, lazy, and destructive individuals who cause negativity and stir up trouble wherever they go for amusement's sake. The key to being immune from attack by this type of bully is literally refusing to be their victim. Strangely enough, I discovered over the years that bullies often tend to like me. I'm serious. With my upbringing and involvement in the martial arts, I've been quite adept at, metaphorically, disarming a multitude of individuals who possess very aggressive, tough, and proud reputations or personalities. I believe this is largely because when I'm subjected to a person's initial tricks to get my attention, I automatically use techniques which are now part of my Be Safe in a Space training. Basically, I do this by refusing to connect to the aggression or challenges by assuming a neutral and non-judgmental demeanour that's neither submissive nor challenging. Consequently, because their tricks don't seem to bother me, potential troublemakers often feel at ease because they don't sense any threat, fear, judgment, or criticism from me. Often, this response is so unusual for them that they take a break from performing their act are becoming friendly and subsequently become far easier to be around. What I'm saying here is that troublemakers tend to test people. And if they don't get a predicted response, they tend to move on to the next person. So it's important that kids are aware of this by having a healthy level of self-esteem. This is another key strategy for being safe in your space, at school and in everyday life. And don't worry, we'll be covering these techniques in depth as the program unfolds. Another common motivation for a bully is the need for approval from the in-crowd. Often a bully can be a self-declared advocate for a group of weak-minded people who may not actively participate in bullying or trouble themselves. They'll do nothing to discourage or stop it. Groups who tolerate this sort of behaviour are not healthy, stimulating, or wise to be around. If this is happening within a group your child is in and nothing's done about it, their energy and happiness will inevitably be drained. The most difficult type of bully to deal with are those who are burdened with deep resentments, which may be totally irrational to you and me, yet create a potent fuel for their anger and insecurities. Usually, this is the type of person who instigates violence or extreme harassment. Whenever a serious problem arises and the school is receptive, it may be worthwhile to talk over any concerns with them in confidence or to ask for advice before it can escalate too far. If they're not receptive or proactive in helping you, it may be time to turn up the heat. And that's what we're going to be looking at exactly how to do next week. The first step in neutralising a problem at school or anywhere is to finding the resolve to stop it. This leaves 3 options. Number 1, fight. Stand up and claim your space and sort out the issue one way or another, once and for all, now. Or there's flight. That means withdrawing or making a step sideways. Number 3, do nothing. Bide your time, wait, watch, gather information, develop alliances, look for weaknesses. There's no right or wrong option for any given situation. Just know that you always have options. And we'll also cover this in detail next week. Well, so far tonight, we've looked at who and what troublemakers are, exactly what is your space and how it's affected by everyone else's space, how the brain is the key element of knowing how to be safe in your space, the concept of the higher self and being in bodyguard mode, what is the spirit and how to develop it, how important it is for you to teach your kids about consequences, verbal and emotional and psychological attacks, the importance and skill of journaling, the types of bullies your child is likely to encounter at school, the basics on how to not connect with a bully. At the beginning of tonight's training, I did mention that there was a homework component to the program. So now I'd like to discuss this assignment for next week. So part 1 is finding a space. As you saw in this exercise on the graphic on the top left, you get really, really close to someone like that. And preferably it's someone, not like your spouse, but maybe your friend or a colleague, a good colleague at work. But get really, really close like this and distinguish what it feels like. There's a physical force that pushes it against you. And then, and please know, you'll laugh a lot, but get your friend to be serious when you do this. And then what you do, just back off slightly, just 15 centimetres or 6 inches each time, and you feel this force lessen slightly. So I want you to feel this. Then you keep doing it to 6 inches at a time until you feel there's no force pushing against you. And then you imagine where that line is in the middle, as you see in the bottom right-hand corner, and distinguish this as being your neutral zone. Okay, so that's part 1. Part 2, when you're going about your normal routine, I'd like you to experiment and apply this concept in the real world in the following ways with the following types of people. Someone you know well, a colleague or acquaintance or a complete stranger. I don't mean going face to face like we did before. I mean, I want you to observe pushy, argy-bargy types of people from each of the categories I just mentioned and watch how they interact with each other. Watch how they interact with unprovoked people, the way they use their voice to be abrasive, or by either yelling or swearing or speaking in a negative way or with a negative tone. Then I want you to watch how they throw their weight around in a physical way. If they're big, note how they use their size to tower over, or how they lean in, move across an unawares person's neutral zone. Then watch how the person who's being dominated moves around. The object of this exercise is to examine the dynamics of these interplays to see if you can distinguish any common denominators. As I mentioned, I'll send you all a file with all the homework information so you can get the most out of it. So please do the work so you can get proficient enough with these new skills so you can pass on this knowledge to your kids. And I might have some extra homework modules in there that, if you're keen, you can try out. There'll be a lot of fun. So before we wrap up, I'd like to quickly remind you to join our Facebook group and share in some of your experiences with the homework. We should get some good stories there, and I'll send you a link tomorrow. So now it's time for some Q&A. If you could just type some questions into the chat box there, I'll see what I can do to answer them. If they keep coming through and we don't have time to finish them, I'll post the questions, because I'm going to save this chat box. I'll post the questions on the Facebook group and I'll answer them there. So are there any questions? And I know some of you it's getting late and some of you might have a big day tomorrow. So if you want to wrap it up there, that's fine too. Remember, I'll be recording these questions and we'll be able to you'll be able to review them later. So there's a little bit of a lag there. So can anyone see anything? Well, I'll just give it a minute or so. I think we've got some coming through here. So there's one here that says, with that finding a space exercise, how does that really affect? How does that affect you in a practical way? Well, once you know what this neutral zone is, you'll notice that the troublemakers, when they're putting pressure on people, they kind of push against this neutral zone by moving towards it or pushing their finger towards you, and when they get in close like that, it feels like, as I said, a physical force going against you. Now, if you're aware of that, there's ways which we're going to look at, such as knowing how to stand, where to look, how to breathe, what to say, and how to say it. That's going to be something that we're going to cover next week. There's also getting a bit of feedback here. Thanks very much. That's great. Thanks, Kate. And okay, we'll have a think about the questions, everybody. And as I said, you can post them on the Facebook group. And for example, we've got some teachers here in our community. So if you want to chime in and give your 2 cents worth about problems at school, be free to do so. And we have some people who are really experienced in leadership. I've got a question here about cyberbullying. Okay, cyberbullying, that is a sticky subject, isn't it? The thing with cyberbullying is that the people who do so, they leave a trace. Of course, they're sophisticated people who can hide their identities by having fake identities. But I'll use a story of a friend of mine. This friend of mine who had a business where one of the competitors took umbrage at the way he thought that my friend was moving in on his turf. And so this person was sending my friend, got his network to send my friend abuse and some threatening posts on Facebook. So, of course, my friends at first started to ignore them, and then you put a block on it, but they were becoming more and more prevalent. So what he did, he just took a screenshot, and every time one came in, he just got screenshot. Remember we spoke about journaling? Well, in cyberbullying, because it's visual, you've got the person's identity, you've got exactly what they said, the exact time, and so you just get yourself a little portfolio, and if you know who the person is, well then you can respectfully ask them to stop, and if that doesn't work, well then you have enough evidence to either take it to the school, and remember next week we're going to look at if the school's not proactive in helping you sort out your problems, how you can turn up the heat and make them help out. Or if things get really bad, as my friend did, he went to the police, and he went to the court, and this person basically got he got let off with a warning, but he had to pay all the court costs, and anyway. There's a bit of a story how to do that, but we could discuss that more when we go online. Another question here from Kirsten about fight or flight. We're definitely going to cover that, Kirsten. That's one of the key components to being safe in your space and martial arts. And the timing to that is also absolutely critical. So I'm glad you bared with me today. It was quite conceptual today, but I want to give you lots of techniques such as the vocal shock, as I said, the eye lines, where to look, how to stand, how to breathe, how to calm yourself, and also some simple and effective moves that you can use no matter what level of experience you've had in training about how to deflect an attack. And fight or flight's an integral part of that. Okay, so I've got some nice thank yous. So I think what I'll do, we'll call it a night here. And I'd just like to thank you all for being a part of this program. And I stumbled and waffled on a little bit, I know. And it was, we only just got the program together just before we went to air. And I know that might have been a little bit obvious, but I'm going to be even better next week, and I'll have some good graphics, and I'll send you some good resources, and including some audios, and we'll have a bit more fun. So thanks very much, everybody, and look out for your Facebook invitations next week. So for now, that's me and Christine, who's waving goodbye. Good night.